Hello and welcome back to ParticularPixels. I'm Charling and this is Drifting Lands. Drifting Lands is a shmup at heart, but unlike most of the other games in the genre, there is loot to be collected, stats to upgrade, a variety of different ships, and a variety of different skills that you can equip to change the way you play. There are story missions and side missions that you're going to make your way through. Some of the side missions will reward you with new blueprints, but I'll talk about blueprints when we get to the loot system. Each of the missions in the game has a difficulty associated with it. Harder missions will obviously net you better loot and more cash, but of course more difficult enemies and wave combinations as well. Each level has a number of waves that can be seen with the indicated segments at the top right of the screen. Each segment is essentially a different wave. The waves themselves are kind of like modules, and depending on the difficulty level and the grade that you're playing on, any number of waves could appear at any particular segment. So if you replay the same level over again, you could potentially get different waves, so you won't be having the same experience over again. Occasionally one of the segments will be marked with an exclamation mark, which indicate a particularly difficult encounter, and these encounters can vary as well, much like the waves do. On the high levels and the grades, the enemies themselves will actually change as well, as do the environments. They will fire more bullets, they have more health, or be different enemies entirely, but in some cases the layout or the patterns of the waves themselves remain the same. Once you reach and complete the level 10 story mission, grade 2 becomes available and unlocks missions that range from level 11 through to level 20, with 10, 20, 30, etc. being boss encounters. Once you've completed the final level of any grade, the next grade unlocks. Once you've unlocked grade 3, for example, you also get access to better versions of the 3 ships that are available in the game. There are 10 grades in Drifting Lands. I've gotten to grade 3 after 11 hours. Now, I'm not an amazing shmup player, but back in the day I think I was pretty competent in the arcades at these types of games, but I'm not awful at the game either. But it still took me 11 hours to grind through the game to get enough good equipment to get to grade 3. The game can be quite challenging, but not so much because of the mechanics themselves, but because you need to upgrade your stats and your ship in order to be able to play the harder missions. Enemies drop cash, health orbs, and loot of varying rarity. Cash allows you to put points into 3 stats which increase your health plus weapon damage, or health and armor, or health and skill effectiveness. Each point you spend gets more and more expensive. Health drops are like health orbs. They give you a small amount of healing mid-mission. Skills require energy to use, and like health orbs, these energy orbs can also refill your energy mid-mission. Loot, though, is a big part of this particular game. Your ship has a number of slots that can be equipped with loot. As you get better loot, like in any other action RPG, you'll be swapping out your equipment to replace it with the better gear. Loot comes in common, uncommon, rare, and unique rarities, with unique having unique bonuses or even unique flaws. You will also find blueprints which allow you to craft specific pieces of gear a certain number of times, and of course, as you would expect, there is a vendor in the game where you can buy gear. Unfortunately though, the gear that's available for sale is not particularly great. And on top of all of this, you'll need cash to buy or craft items as well as upgrading your stats. And what ends up happening is that you'll be grinding levels so that you can either save up enough cash to buy what you need, or to farm loot to improve your ship. And this can actually take quite a while, which is evident from my current playthrough, 11 hours in, and I'm just about doing enough damage now to defeat the grade 2 boss. If you take too long to defeat a boss, he eventually flies away, which will cause you to fail the mission. This happened to me when I was fighting the grade 1 boss. He just left, and then the mission failed, so I ended up having to farm the levels just before the boss to get enough gear, and hopefully get good enough gear at least to kill him fast enough. By default, you also have an auto retreat skill equipped. I'll talk about the skills in a minute. When your health hits 0, you will automatically retreat from the level that you're on. You can swap this out for another skill, but we'll get onto that later. If you retreat from a stage for whatever reason, or if you lose all of your health and you auto retreat, you won't get any cash reward for doing the stage, and you'll lose all of the drops and the cargo that you collected. If you die, again, which is only possible if you remove the auto retreat skill, you lose your ship. Now that means you need to buy a new ship and all the gear that you had on it, and on top of that, all the money that you spent in the stat upgrade points will be lost. You'll need to start over from scratch. So you essentially turn the game into hardcore mode by removing this particular skill. There are 4 active skill slots that you can equip, and 2 passives. As I mentioned before, the auto retreat is by default one of the passives. There are basic and advanced active skills in the game, each having 4 or 5 variations on how it works, as well as the auto skills which don't require your input to activate. Basic skills enable bubbles that absorb damage, for example, or allow you to dash around avoiding damage, detonation which causes an explosion around you killing enemies, and the ability to repair your ship a small amount. The advanced skills offer the ability to slow down time or allow you to fire backwards and such. The choice of the 4 active skills you choose will govern the way you play the game. The auto skills also can net you more money, protect you from impact, and all of this kind of thing. Again, all of these skills have different variations as well. So the variations you unlock just by playing the game and by getting further and further in the game, so you won't have access to all of the variations of all of the skills right away. Again, much like Diablo 3. So your choice of skills, as I said, is going to govern the way you play the game, and it's really going to make a significant difference to your strategy. And on top of swapping out all the skills, there are also 3 different ships that you can use in the game: light, medium, and heavy. All 3 operate as you would expect them to, with the light ship being very fast, very mobile, the heavy ship having more health and more armor than the other 2 ships, and the medium ship being sort of a combination of the other 2. However, if you do choose to use another ship in the game, you'll have to upgrade its gear and its stats separately. So essentially you'll be starting from scratch, with the exception of the cash that you've already got and the loot that you've already found. But keep in mind that the higher level loot also requires better stats to be able to equip, like any other action RPG. So you may even have some rare gear that you want to equip on your new ship, but you won't be able to because you have to upgrade these stat requirements first, which of course cost money. As I mentioned earlier in the video, once you get to grade 3, you also unlock the ability to buy a more powerful version of the 3 ships, and again at a later stage there is a 3rd version of each of the said ships. There is a storyline in the game as well. The world's been devastated and the humans and AI are at war, something along those lines. It's presented by images and text, which is fine. It's not particularly gripping or interesting, but it does the job of pushing the story forward. But again, you probably aren't playing this kind of game for the story anyway. The gameplay itself is actually very enjoyable. If you like shmups, you'll for sure enjoy Drifting Lands. The controls in the game are responsive. They do recommend you play the game with the gamepad, and I have been playing the game with the gamepad, but there is the keyboard option as well. I know some people have complained on the Steam forums that the game is not responsive, but as I said, I'm not hardcore into shmups, so perhaps it's the difference that I'm not noticing, but there wasn't anything that blatantly stood out to me as causing an issue with the controls that affected my enjoyment or my ability to maneuver around in the game. The performance for the most part is fine. However, there were a few wave configurations in the time that I've played the game that caused the frame rate to drop. Now, the frame rate never dropped below 70 on my PC. For the most part, it stayed above 120. Obviously, I can't speak with other system configurations. But what I will say was an issue is that in the sections where the frame rate dropped, there was a massive increase in input latency. So when moving around my ship, it would take literally half a second to a second before my ship actually responded to me moving around. And obviously this is really not a good thing in a shmup because it's enough to get you killed. But once the wave finished, the frame rate returns normal and the input delay is gone. I'm not sure if this is a bug. It seems to me that this is some kind of bug that connects the input latency to the frame rate, but it is annoying enough, as I said, to get you killed. Thankfully, it doesn't happen very often. But I do want to emphasize that I am only on grade 2/grade 3 out of 10. I'm almost certain that when the game gets harder, there are going to be more enemies on screen at once, and the chance of the FPS dropping is likely going to increase. And if the FPS drop is as big as in the examples I just listed, then I would imagine that the input latency issue is going to become more apparent and is going to happen more often. So this is something to keep in mind. Of course, I am speculating here since I've not gotten to that stage of the game, but hopefully this is something that they are looking into. Overall though, I think that the concept of Drifting Lands is very interesting. The game is a lot of fun and kept me playing for 11 hours so far. It is addictive and it's going to keep you glued to your screen for that just one more try. My biggest complaint with the game is that the grind is real. Even though replaying stages stays relatively fresh for the most part with the variations in the waves, I think that the drop rate for the good gear is too low, and I think especially the drop rate for the blueprints is incredibly low. You can't buy the better gear because the store sells awful gear. You can't craft the gear because you don't have the blueprints, so you're forced to keep replaying the hardest missions that you can so that you can get good gear to, progress more comfortably through the game. However, I do think that the game is worth picking up, especially if you're a fan of shmups and you don't mind the grind to progress. I think that the premise is pretty good, and as I mentioned before, the gameplay is actually very, very enjoyable. If grind is the concern, then perhaps it's a good idea to wait to see if they plan on addressing the rate of the loot drops and things like that. Also, some folks, as I mentioned before, are complaining that the controls aren't as tight as they should be for a shmup. But again, that is not something that stood out to me, at least. However, if you are not a fan of shoot 'em ups, then this game is not going to change your mind, because obviously it's still a shoot 'em up. But if you are curious, there is a demo that you can try out. It is limited to grade 1, but it's not time based. So you can play through grade 1 and you can repeat the missions as many times as you like to get a taste of the game, its systems and the controls. Anyway guys, that has been a look at Drifting Lands. If you have any questions or comments, as usual, you can leave them in the section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to share it, subscribe if you want updates to future videos, like it if you liked it, or dislike it if you didn't. Thanks for watching guys, I've been Xiaoling, until next time.